All right, so our question for today, day 7 of the 30-day challenge, is from Elizabeth L. And Elizabeth said, Michael, I love the opportunity to present to your subscribers. Great content, good guest speakers, helpful hints. My biggest challenge is there are more bands than there ever have been in my career. They all want to play. A lot of them play for less money. And for those of us who've been making music for a long time, playing shows, they're actually undercutting us in the market, and it's become more saturated. And at the same time, when it comes to sync licensing, a lot of supervisors using music libraries that are pre-mixed, mastered, stemmed, cleared, ready to go. And so the question is, how do I stand out in a saturated market, right? Because we've talked about this before, but we live in this golden age of being a musician where because of the internet, because of the way technology has grown, we can record high quality content in a home studio. And it's so easy to put your music out there that it has become really saturated, and we have to figure out how to cut through the noise has become one of the biggest challenges and one of the biggest opportunities. And when it comes to that specific question of how do I compete when there's other artists who are undercutting the price, right? It's a great question. And so you want to compete based on value rather than competing based on price. And what that means is when you're designing your offerings, when you become a business and you're making offers, then you have this thing called a unique value proposition. And what is the value that you're offering? What's different about it? Why would someone choose this versus another option? And so there's different things that can be included in a value proposition, right? The value proposition, if you're a traditional service-based business, it might be that you save someone a lot of time, right? So maybe you offer something that's going to save them 20 hours a week. And that's a huge value proposition. Another value proposition is that compared to all the other options, you're the cheapest option. And so that's one of the value propositions that you're expressing, that there's other artists who are coming in who are undercutting you, and their value proposition is, hey, you can book us for less money and we'll play for it. And it's a dangerous battle if you get into competing based on price, because the only way to compete based on price is to have the cheapest price. There's always people who are willing to go out of business faster than you. Just because someone can offer a cheaper doesn't necessarily mean that it's sustainable and they're going to be able to do it long term. So a lot of these musicians who might be undercutting you, they might just be inexperienced when it comes to their business, and therefore you're offering, okay, I'll play the show for $20 or I'll play it for free, and that's not sustainable. Right? So that's not a sustainable business. They'll go out of business at some point. And so if you're trying to compete based on price, then you're going to have to undercut each other, and it's going to hurt yourselves, and it's not going to be sustainable long term. And if someone is looking to make a buying decision and their number one priority is how can I spend as little amount of money as possible, that person probably isn't going to be really that committed or really invested, or they don't really value you that much because they want to spend as little as humanly possible. So what's the alternative? If you're not competing based on price, then the alternative is that you're competing based on value. And what that means is you want to focus on what can I do to provide more value in a way that only I can offer. Some examples of things like this are doing retreats where maybe your fans can actually come out and spend time with you in the studio and record claps or snaps or background vocals on a song. Maybe it's actually doing a custom song experience where you actually write a song for a fan. When you make a sale for a higher end offer like that, the expectations are higher, both from yourself and from other people. And I think that's a really healthy thing because it actually forces you to upgrade your mindset and to deliver. And so that's definitely a big piece of it, is that you're really forced to level up in a lot of different ways, both from the expectations externally and from the expectations internally, in order to be able to be congruent with making a higher end offer like that. If you ask yourself the question consistently, how can I provide more value? And how can I actually over deliver? That's almost always going to lead you in the right direction, versus if you're just trying to figure out how can I be as cheap as possible. If you're focused on the high end of the market, then you tend to attract people who have more than enough money and they just want the best experience. They want the best experience. They're willing to invest for it. For example, when it comes to technology, computers 30 years ago were very expensive, right? There were benefits to having one of those computers too. You could become the market leader in an industry because you were the first to have access to these computers. You could build a multi-billion-dollar business because you had access to these computers before anyone else. That being said, the computers that you bought back then compared to what we're using now were hundreds of thousands of dollars for a basic computer that was 1,000 times less powerful than the computer that you're accessing this on, whether it's a phone or your actual computer. So when you think about it, those cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the value of it was worth it. And there's people who are willing to invest and pay that to be early adopters. If you focus on the high end of the market, then it tends to ripple out to the entire market overall, long term. The early adopters invest a lot of money that helps to fund full accessibility of these devices for everyone. That's why we're all here right now on cell phones and on our devices, is because these were essentially paid for by those early adopters. One example of how you could apply this to your music career is by taking the viewpoint of how can I be a trendsetter, right? How can I do something that's unique, that's at the high end of the market before everyone else catches up to it? One example of this is creating music NFTs, right? So music NFTs are a totally new type of opportunity for artists to offer to their fans. And the artists who are on top of it, who are actually setting the trend, are making hundreds of thousands of dollars, even millions of dollars offering these NFTs because they're on the cutting edge. And this might not always be the way it is. It might be that eventually it catches up, kind of like computers. That's just one example, but there's always things like that. And if your question is, how can I provide as much value as possible? How can I be a trendsetter? How can I take that next thing and focus on serving those people who value experiences and the things that are priceless? Because there's always going to be cheap venues or bars that aren't really looking to spend a lot of money on live performance. And then there's also going to be casinos, and there's gonna be corporate gigs and places that are paying tens of thousands of dollars for these events. And you could be the exact same person playing the exact same set, but get paid $50 for it versus getting paid $10,000 for it, just because you're focused on serving the high end of the market. Ironically, it's less competitive if you make that your focus and you lean in that direction than if you go the opposite direction. Because most musicians, we undervalue ourselves and we don't have the identity to feel like we deserve to charge that much. And so therefore, there's actually much less competition at the high end of the market. It comes with some things. Like, it means that you need to sharpen your edge and you need to be intentional and you need to create a self-image and an offer that fits with the high end of the market, but relatively compared to the amount of energy and the struggle and the effort that goes into the opposite direction, this is actually gonna help you really to be able to cut through the noise in a saturated market. It's really interesting how much of this value is internal. Let's say, for example, that one of your high-end offers is a private party where you're going to go out to a fan's house and you're going to play a show for them and their friends and their family, and you're charging $3,000 for this event. Then even with the same group of people and everything else exactly the same, if you offered that to them entirely for free versus doing it for the $3,000 price, and then at the end you surveyed them, then likely what's going to happen is that $3,000 experience, when you show up and you play that show, their ears are going to be perked up. They're going to be in full attendance. They're going to laugh at all your jokes. They're going to ask good questions. They're going to take it way more seriously on both ends, just by taking the mindset of, okay, if I'm going to offer something at this level, what do I need to do in order to feel congruent with it, that it's valuable enough? And a lot of that is internal. A lot of that is understanding the value of yourself and your music. That's why we focus on that early on. Module 1 is artist identity, and that's easily the number one most crucial part of all of this, is your mindset and the identity piece of it, becoming the person who deserves to achieve those goals. It's some pretty cool stuff, and I geek out about it, so I could ramble here for a while, but I do want to end it here so I can go hang out with family. All right, see you guys.